Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. As we sit here today, I'd like to just direct us towards particularly offering merit for Lim's mother who died recently. Also, some of you may have heard about the village of Lytton in Canada, which has been 90% engulfed with a fire, and the monks at the temple nearby, Lions Gate Temple with Reverend Master Coten and Reverend Master Aurelian, were very kindly given an opportunity to go to a motel, and this was a day or two before the fire suddenly engulfed the village. And very kindly, somebody out of the blue offered them the chance to be in a motel to get a bit cooler because the temperatures were getting so high. And they were saying how grateful they were, and subsequently, of course, the whole village has gone up in flames. It probably still remains to be seen whether there will be a temple buildings remaining after this. So we're dealing with, in all sorts of ways, the powerful elements of our experience. And this weekend is the Bodhidharma festival, when we remember the first ancestor of Buddhism, Bodhidharma, Great Master Bodhidharma. The founder of our order and temple spoke of how, ever since she was a young child, there was a fire burning in her. The fires of training, the fire of Zazen. Similarly, Great Master Bodhidharma has an extraordinary power and image to him in how he's portrayed, although, of course, we don't really know anything factually really about him. So I just was reflecting, and I'm sure you are too, on how it is to be alive, this living being, connected into the world and everything, as if also within ourselves we experience also a world moments. They're almost like a bubble. We are with that bubble of a particular sense of how it is, how we feel, how we experience this moment. And then instantaneously, it can be another bubble experience. Maybe that next bubble experience is similar, but not completely the same. So we have a sort of sense of our life in connection to everything, and we can remember and put experiences beside each other and arrange them, as it were, within our thinking mind to create a sense of something, a sense perhaps of a day and how a day was. Perhaps we could even say, and do say to ourselves, oh, today was a good day, or today was a difficult day, as if this day could be bubbled into a little place that's got its own reality. But in fact, it's a lot of little tiny moments that we've collected together to make a sense of how a day was in our being, in our thinking. And interestingly, it doesn't take us any calculating much consciously to create or to experience the sense, if we reflect on it, of how today was. It's just happening seemingly without any effort on our part, and how we know the world is the same. It just seems to come to us unbidden, and we experience it. And of course, today is a grey day with a bit of mizzle in the air. We experience it so immediately and quickly, we don't even question how we make ourselves experience it that way. But indeed, we do actually, in a way, make ourselves experience it a particular way, particularly when our view of the experience comes to the fore, which of course we all have all the time. So perhaps like you, I don't know, but today with the drizzle and the grey clouds, I'm thinking I'm so grateful for those, having just watched this morning the fire pictures of the remains of Lytton village in Canada. So my experience today of the potential for rain is different to what it would have been yesterday because of my carrying of the sense of having just seen the horrific way in which the fire just ripped through the whole village and in fact has killed at least 2 people and probably others. So what has been there, perhaps for me and I'm sure for all of us in different ways, is a question or a sense of what is real, what really is real, and how is it that I experience reality really as many different things coming together to create an overarching sense of how it is. A very potent example recently was when I visited my mother, who is now severely in a state of having lost her memory, and she thinks there are 2 of me, and she has a memory of me as a baby, and she thinks that still exists, and she also sees me now. And so she literally believes there are 2 of me. And it was very telling to have this conversation where I said, the baby, Jan, is nowhere, you can't find it anymore. And yet, in her own memory, of course, she could find it, or did find it, and thought that it therefore existed. And I found that a very simple but yet telling illustration of how, or example of how, we blur our experience from what is actually now to all these other factors that we have brought with us. And we kind of still think they kind of exist, whereas of course for me, being the baby that she once had, and I jolly well know for sure that I'm not that little baby, and it certainly hasn't got any existence now, except in her memory or in perhaps any bits of my memory. So when we have our natural human experience, which Bodhidharma talks about as the mind being able to produce both positive and helpful experience, and it also being able to go towards looking for evil things to do, as he puts it, the mind immaculate and the mind stained, as he calls it. We have to see those, and he says these attitudes and longings are inherent in our human nature. And within our human longings, always there is Zazen. Always. And that is, if you like, the fire of silence which burns everything and completely actually burns it until there isn't really the us as a sense of an idea that is carrying everything around anymore. So that fire that the founder of our order and Bodhidharma's fire was an inner fire that doesn't look like anything other than actually turning up to sit and just simply following, in terms of today, the schedule, and doing the best we can to let Zazen be itself. Bodhidharma describes our experiences as the product of the mind. And he says in the beginning of his bloodline sermon that everything that appears in the three realms comes from mind. And these three realms basically are the realm of desire, which is where we all are living, experiencing desire and obviously aversion and confusion as well. And the realm of form and the formless realm. So these very many experiences that we have as humans is what's described in the Wheel of Life as everything experienced as dependent or being dependent upon everything else to prop it up. So we have our experience of the senses, we have eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind. We have a life force, we are aware and an ability to perceive and then assess what we perceive, the objects of our perception. Had we not got all these elements to make us up, all propping each other up, we would not experience the impulses of desire. And what we all tend to take for granted within all our varied experience of life is that they're all really happening as an objective fact, and they're happening to us. So we always tend towards this sense of the boundary between where we finish and everything else starts. But if one element of that sense of boundary changes, then the whole experience is changed. So we, in that sense, are changed as we align our sense of ourselves. So as we align our sense of ourselves with any particular condition, so that creates the sense of how we are. If there is a headache, it's my headache, and I need to do something about it. And I think the point that Bodhidharma is making about how the feeling of existence is so strong, the feeling that I exist, is related to the fact that we don't see how actually sitting here, many different elements come together to create the feeling that I have an existence sitting here, and remove some of those, or particular key elements like consciousness, for example, and no longer do I experience me sitting here. I am only, if I sit here and think about my mother, I am only a daughter because I have a mother or parents. I only experience and know how I feel now because I remember or put together the contrast with how it felt before. And the image of the chariot that the Buddha uses, where he says you cannot find a chariot in the parts of the chariot. If you put an axle and the doors and the wheels and the canopy on the floor and look at them all and don't put them all together into fitting together as a chariot, then they're not a chariot. And what is the point at which something becomes a chariot? In our case, what is the point at which we, as it were, have believed or put things together in such a way that we're saying, I really am existent. This is how it is. This is how everything is. So never doubt that Zazen, in its gentle but persistent way, is just the quiet being of nothing being anything in particular. That fire is the, if you like, the reverse fire of destruction. It's actually the fire that brings to life. And yet at the same time, that fire from where we sit may look like it requires us to let go in such ways that are very hard or difficult. But it's only because we see from a perspective of holding something together that letting go seems so difficult. Because there can't even be a letting go if we just sit with things as they are. So whenever we make an experience into an our experience, we immediately in our mind are creating those divisions which then seem to make it difficult. So Bodhidharma is saying, if you understand anything, you don't understand. Only when you understand nothing is it true understanding. Understanding is neither understanding nor not understanding. When the mind doesn't exist, understanding and not understanding are both true. When the mind exists, understanding and not understanding are both false. When you understand, reality depends on you. When you don't understand, you depend on reality. When you depend on reality, that which is real becomes false. When you depend on reality, everything is false. When reality depends on you, everything is true. Thus, the sage doesn't use his mind to look for reality. When the mind appears, reality disappears. When the mind disappears, reality appears. Whoever knows that nothing depends on anything has found the way. And whoever knows that the mind depends on nothing is always at the place of realization or enlightenment. So, in his turn, as did the Buddha, Bodhidharma is explicitly saying in his teachings, don't seek for anything. He says, have faith in the fact that we all share this same mind. You could say that mind that he uses as a word could be expressed as this. So you could say, we all share this same this now. He says, while success and failure depend on conditions, the mind, or this neither waxes nor wanes, like space which has a name but no form. It is not something you can pick up or put down. So hence our practice, in a sense, is no practice. We can't look towards finding our true nature by doing something or creating something tangible, by taking up some sort of means to arrive at this end of getting enlightened, or whatever we think it is. So the Buddha, in saying that the mind is the forerunner, and that everything you experience is created by mind, is pointing us to not grabbing even at Dharma activities, not seeking out or pushing too hard, as if they were something apart from what you already are. Bodhidharma is taking us back to the root, and he says by thoroughly comprehending what real mind is, we will conserve our efforts. So when we hear these words, they have no real meaning. They are the wordless words of what that fire of being, of Zazen, that cannot really be expressed. So we only really need to rest in the trust of our real nature, our real being. And that real being never having been upside down, topsy-turvy. And even if we do feel topsy-turvy, we continue to just trust that everything we experience is just a product of mind. We will then experience life, perhaps illness, death, all the comings and goings. And all of that will not be too exciting or worrying, because we're not looking to a future that has a promise of something better. As right now, everything continues to change, grow, decay, grow, decay. Bodhidharma uses the image of somebody painting a picture, and probably that picture would contain a lot of our sense of who we've been in the past, and what may still be the existent baby that has long gone. But he says we paint the picture and then we're scared by it. Yet we painted it. Or similarly, like the silkworm who creates its own trap in weaving its little silk cocoon, and then dies in it. The whole teaching of the Buddha's teaching on paticca samutpada, dependent arising, is to point us to the fact that the stream of our sensory experiences, although they powerfully seem to tell us we are separate, they are as it were, an extraordinarily powerful illusion. So as we turn back the creating mind into allowing whatever the thinking or anything does, not particularly taking too much notice of it, not particularly ignoring it. It may seem dull, boring, this way or that way, but we truly are taking ourselves, or this, back towards its real root. And when we realize that there really isn't a separation, but what I experience, seemingly for me, is completely made up within my experience. I may think that the Lytton village and the people now sheltering in accommodation are somewhere else and different from me, and on one level we are separated, but on another level none of that really is separate. From this, there isn't really the separation. So as we sit, there is actually nothing to do, because anything we do is as if we think we are a doer that can change and make things happen in a certain way that would be better than them happening in another way. But that's not actually how it works. So as each memory or thought or bubble experience happens, letting it be completely what it is, noticing you're pushing or pulling or perhaps resisting or wanting, not resisting either, not trying to do anything about anything. That is the direction of the fire of Bodhidharma, the fire of Buddha nature. Homage to all the Buddhas in all worlds. Homage to all the Bodhisattvas in all worlds. Homage to the scripture of great wisdom.